right, cool. Well, then let's just jump into this episode of Kicking Tables with Andrew Lowen, the creator of Deliverance. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Pleasure being here. I am excited. I can't get words right, but
I
I
am
will.
excited too. I gotta tell you, as soon as I learned about your game, this is a faith-based game. I was super excited. So I'm excited to learn more about Deliverance. So why don't we jump in and you tell our audience what Deliverance is?
Okay, so the simplest way I can describe Deliverance is that it is a Christian fantasy dungeon crawler. So you play an elite angel in the army of heaven, and you come down to this little podunk backwoodsy town in modern day Southern California called Fallbrook, which coincidentally is the name of the town that I live. And
So true story.
demons all over this town. Yeah. So the town is small and out of the way, nestled in the hills, but there is so much demonic activity going on here that you need to investigate. And what you suspect is that one of your former angelic brethren, one of the mighty fallen princes that now leads the armies of darkness from the shadows, has set up camp here and is leading the armies from this town. Now, it's your mission, ever since the victory on the cross, it's been your mission to hunt these demons down
Hmm.
and send them to the abyss to await their final judgment. But something is strange is happening here. It seems that the evils from the human realm are bleeding into the spiritual realm and manifesting. So this strange mist is coming up from the ground, which kind of acts as the walls in the game, the barriers, that you cannot pass through, and darkness, the evils from the human realm, like the death, decay, sickness, the terrible things people do to one another, are actually manifesting into things that will cripple you and so or that threaten to destroy you.
Right.
So you it's kind of the object of the game. You're playing cooperatively as up to 1 to 4 angels,
Okay.
and you're playing against the game itself, which controls the demons. So that's kind of how it works.
That's all. I love co-op games. So and
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it was a couple of months ago that you and I connected about setting this up. And as soon as I heard that Christian-based dungeon crawler, I'm like, how? Where?
Yeah,
Tell me more.
it sounds like two phrases that don't belong together. You
Right?
know,
Well, I mean,
and
it's no
yeah.
different than I'm a D&D player. I mean, Christian D&D. Come on, that can't be real, right?
Right.
It's the same idea.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, when you hear something about Christian D&D, you're like, well, yeah, maybe it's a thing, but how can that be fun? Like, how did you make it fun,
D&D
though?
is just a story. That's
Yeah.
really
So how
literally what it
how
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
how did you come up with the idea? What was sort of the origin story? Like when did the spire come down and bite you, and this idea popped into your head?
So, crazy enough, the day that we're recording this is the 1st of June, 2021. The genesis for this idea, pun so intended, was June 1st, 2016. So this is the 5th year anniversary to the
Wow.
day that I came up with this game. And I was kind of frustrated about a situation. My wife and I, we always play games together. I love co-op. I love she's my player number two, so we play a lot of two-player games. And dungeon crawls are a natural fit for 2 players.
Hmm.
They tend to be pretty massive and can be kind of clunky when you play with four or whatever. I mean, you'll try to play Gloomhaven with max player count. It's like it's just not as good as with two, in my opinion. And so the problem is, though, that all the dungeon crawlers are filled with things that might cause a Christian to feel that they're compromising. So now I'm a Christian, and I was a former professional Hearthstone player, a semi-professional poker player. I did a lot of gaming, 30,000 hours in World of Warcraft, and
Wow.
on one character, and I mean, so many more things, But I never really felt that. I was always kind of able to separate my faith from gaming, and part of that was out of necessity because all Christian games that exist were terrible. So it's like I don't have an option.
Yep.
And yeah, and so I was okay with it. And then my wife, though, she never really was. She always felt uncomfortable with magic and concepts like that. And I was just like kind of frustrated because, we would always throw or turn things, she would always turn things down. Or, one time we actually threw a game away because she felt like, I just don't want this in my home.
Mm.
And it was like, you know what? Happy wife, happy life. And I've got a board game shelf full. So I was like, all right, I'll get rid of this one, and it still hurts my heart to say what it is. So I can't say what it is. But okay, well, Seventh Continent. It was the Seventh Continent. I threw away a full Kickstarter pledge of the Seventh
Oh
Continent,
wow.
and boom, yeah, it hurt in the feels. And but you know what? It was just the exclamation point on the problem, which was there are people like this everywhere
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
kind of feel like there's an issue with these themes. And I just wish I could play a game that gave me everything I wanted of the awesomeness of that experience of dungeon crawling and slaying bad guys and leveling up and getting loot and
Right.
saving the world or whatever, without compromising on the elements like magic and whatnot. So I went to answer your question. I went out on a run, and my wife made me go out on a run. I was frustrated, and so she made me go run. And I just read the book of Jude, and it talks about there's a scene with Michael the archangel who is disputing with Satan over the body of Moses. It's just a single verse in the book of Jude, Jude 1:9, if you want to go check it out. And it's like Jude is writing to people who knew what this was,
Mm.
and it was like, oh yeah, that's an example we all know. But I didn't know that. I was like, what in the world is he talking about? How did he dispute with Satan? Did they have words? Did they bust out swords? And, like, how did it work? Right. And I thought, man, that'd be a really cool concept for a game. You could have angels and demons. And I realized that, dude, I can cast a fireball into a demon's face and melt it to ash by the power of God. And then all of a sudden, there's no compromising in the kind of the magic area. And there's biblical precedence
Yeah.
for angels with the power of fire, angels with, controlling the four winds, angels of water, angels with, Michael the archangel, who's a fighter, Gabriel, who's a messenger, and so much else. And there was
Right.
also precedent for demons resisting angels, like as in Gabriel, the guy who was like, "Hey Mary, baby Jesus," right?
Yeah.
The That guy was blocked for 3 weeks from delivering a really important message by this demon called the Prince of Persia. And I was like, so Gabriel, the number one messenger, the best postal worker ever in heaven, is blocked. And it's like, by the way, God gave me permission to do this. And the prince is like, I don't care. It's like, that sounds like a pretty interesting theme to me. And
Did
so
you
that's kind of where the idea began.
did you you must have inevitably had some pushback even from the faith community about building a game like this. How did you deal with that? And what kind of reaction did you get?
So, starting this process, I figured there would be pushback because, number one, as a hardcore gamer, I knew that Christian games there's a negative connotation with a Christian
Hmm.
game. It's like a slightly worse retheme of an already existing game, like Settlers of Catan, there's Settlers of Canaan,
Oh my
there's
gosh.
Monopoly, there's Bibleopoly, I mean, there's every kind of trade. I mean, it's just the list goes on, and people are familiar enough with it to know that Christian games are really there to like preach the gospel to you and get you to convert by the end of the game. And there are just a lot of things getting in the way. Now, what I didn't expect was how so I'll say this: Christians are my biggest advocates. They are like, oh my goodness, a game like this exists. I
Hmm.
can't wait to check it out. I'm
Yep.
cautiously optimistic. Like, I hope it's not terrible. My expectations are like B movie. Like, I hope I know what I'm getting, but I'm cautiously optimistic. And then they see it and they're like, wow, this is great. And now there are other Christians that, you know, just straight up will look and be like, oh, there's a demon in it. Ooh, that's terrible.
Right.
How could you touch it? Or, you're going to hell for depicting Christ that way, unless you repent. They always give me that out. Unless you repent. It's like, thank you, good sir. I'm going to hell. And so I've been told I'm going to hell at least half a dozen times that I can remember, and I've had to really develop thick skin. Non-Christians will give me banjo memes because Deliverance is the name of an old movie where you
Yeah.
don't want to watch it. If you haven't seen it, just don't. see it, I would recommend. It's like a very artistic movie with a really horrid scene, but banjos are played in this movie. And so, a lot of non-Christians will give me banjo memes. I've seen more memes than all of your users combined will see, or the people that watch this will see in 100 lifetimes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm okay with it. It's like fun, but what was really hard for me was when, the people that I expected would be like the warmest to the idea were the biggest. They'll protest my funeral for sure. Some
Wow.
some of these people, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
that's
like
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's a hard road to walk there, right? You're trying to do something right, but then there's always going to be those opponents of that. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of tough because on one hand, you have so the Bible is, let's talk about it like super secular and use an example like Lord of the Rings. You have a very well established lore base. You have the
Hmm.
Silmarillion, you have the Hobbit, you have the Lord of the Rings trilogy that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote. So if you want to like Fantasy Flight games, we've got Journeys to Middle Earth right over there, which is one of my favorite games. I've got a ton of plays of that game, and Legolas uses a bow. He's an elf. He's got silver hair or whatever, or brown hair. Um, you've got Aragorn. You've got Gandalf.
Yep.
Gandalf has tons of weapons. Now, if they gave Legolas pink hair, it wouldn't pass muster. The Tolkien
Yeah.
company would say, nope, you're
Right.
not
Right.
able to print that. And because there's a very well established lore base, Legolas uses a bow. He's awesome. He weighs as much as a feather, and the bread fills you up for a week or whatever, right? The Lambus bread. And that's just the way it works.
Right.
Now, with the Bible, you've got also the same established lore base. You've got rules. It's an established story. Angels are good, demons are bad, Satan's the worst. That's how it is. There's not an angel that's going to go bad. There's not a demon that's going to be good, and that's just the way it is. So sometimes, well, I'll say this, that you can't do anything in a good Christian game like this. You can't do anything because it's cool. You have to do it because it fits in with the lore base.
Right.
And you
The
don't have
established lore. Yeah.
yeah, and you don't have a company that tells you this. It's more community managed, we'll say.
Yeah.
You
Somebody will
know,
tell you. Don't worry. Somebody will let you know when you've made a mistake.
yeah. So it's been
So,
interesting.
about the game itself, talk to us a little bit about how the enemies are controlled. I was reading something that the game controls the enemies, and
Yes.
I want to know, like, is that something with the game control? Is it something that's going to make it predictable, or is it something that's going to sort of change every time?
So there's I call it semi-scripted.
Okay.
So each individual demon has a card that controls all demons of that type. Each card has we'll call it a series of actions, that you go through to do whatever that type of demon is going to do. Certain abilities are going to activate every turn. For example, the meddling imp. It's kind of like Lilo and Stitch. You've got Stitch. It's just like a pain in the neck, but not very powerful. But they swarm in mass,
Right.
and so you've got these characters will always remove all damage counters. Every single turn, the first thing you do is remove all the damage counters from those characters. And then you're actually going to roll a dice to determine what it is that they do. So they have a decision tree that's randomized, but certain skills that will always happen that way. And the so that's and the way that they engage with one another. My wife is coming. Say hi to everyone, Christine. Should I wait, or is everyone going to be like
Oh, go
around?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the idea is that the way that these demons are going to interact, some of them, like the meddling imps, are going to swarm in and attack you, and they're just going to cause plague and sickness and deal damage and whatnot. And then other enemy types might attack you from range. Other enemy types might heal or deal like uh, some crippling status effects or cause darkness cards to enter into play and that sort of thing that would force you to kind of adapt your play. So the demons are controlled by the game in that way, in semi-scripted. Now the bosses of the game, they are in the same way. They have a decision tree where certain things happen all the time,
Okay.
and then other things happen, kind of randomly. And
So some
then
things you can plan for, and there's other things you're not going to be able to plan for.
That's right. So
Okay.
sometimes it's like, okay, if this boss does, so they generally have three different skills that you would roll the dice and to determine what it is they're going to do that round. They
Okay.
might move towards you, or they might pull you. And actually, one of my favorite mechanics in this game is how a demon will pull you out of position. It'll actually make you walk toward it, and just mess up all your plans. There are a lot of actions in the game that demons can take that will force you to change what plans you had,
Right.
um, and which I kind of think is important to keep people on their toes and whatnot. If you can predict your next 4 turns and how you're going to win, it's kind of basic, right? There's not really a whole lot of tension there.
Yeah.
Um, but in it, so the boss is in addition to the decision tree, you have a special 5 card deck that will be placed on the darkness board that is again semi-scripted. So you've got some cards that are always going to come out first, and then you've got other cards that are randomized within that 5 card deck. And so there are some cards or some bosses are a little more scripted than others. A little other bosses are very unpredictable in that deck, and they work. Those cards work together really nicely with those decision trees to create what I would consider, as a huge World of Warcraft player, this is a World of Warcraft raid boss. Is
Okay.
exactly what it is. It's like,
Okay.
Nice.
you've got okay, there's Ragnaros back in the day. I mean, Classic is now popular. Burning Crusade's about to hit, from what I know. So you've got Ragnaros, the big fire titan. You know that
Yeah.
you've got to go in and tank him, and he's gonna punch people with his hammer. And then you know that he's gonna throw fireballs around. And then there's this thing that he does sometimes, which is disappear, and then a bunch of minions are gonna come in, and you have to like predict when that's going to happen, and that may happen soon, it may happen later, other things might happen, and then all of a sudden you might show up really quick or whatever. It forces you to adapt, and
Right.
that's kind of fun. Like every week you get in there and you have to kind of for a World of Warcraft encounter, you would have to adapt your play,
Yeah.
and that's what makes those encounters fun.
That's cool.
So that's kind of what those boxes do.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Now there's one other element, because combat by itself is like, I just feel like tension needs, so it's like a push-pull relationship in a game, for Deliverance, you're fighting these demons in tactical combat, and that's how you win the game, but you're also dealing with this darkness track. So these cards are going to
Okay.
come out. So that's like a huge, counterbalance to how many actions you devote to dealing damage and beating the demons, and how many actions you devote to controlling the darkness cards that come out. If you're
Okay.
familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with like Magic the Gathering.
Oh yeah.
There are enchantments and sorceries or
Yeah.
instant effects in that deck that will, maybe now you can't heal anymore, or maybe you can't gain resources of a certain kind, or you just straight up take damage equal to, your strength, or something like that. So those cards will come into play face down, but based on, they kind of, it's almost like Pandemic, where Pandemic you have a bunch of city cards that come into play and
Yep.
get
Right.
infected,
Yeah.
and then the Epidemic comes out, and those city cards go back on top of the deck,
Yep.
and it becomes more intense. So the darkness cards come out, and you're like, all right, they're all face down, they're not going to activate, but next round, if you didn't deal with any of those, more will come into play, and there's only a limited number of spaces on that board. If there's another card to be put into play and there's not a space left, you're going to not, instead of putting a card into play, you're going to flip one over and
You're
attack.
starting to get yourself in that real,
Yeah,
damage
Yeah.
explosion gonna start happening.
right. So,
With
yeah.
with the game itself, you obviously you have your campaign coming. When the campaign's finished and you're funded and everything, what are the future plans for the game? Do you have expansions already thought out? Do you have anything that's already planned?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
So the first thing is, depending on how the campaign does, my artist, who's worked with me for a long time on this game, he's worked part-time while his wife has worked full-time. If things go well, he's absolutely going to go full-time and work exclusively for me. And
Wow.
Awesome.
he's that excited. He's like so convinced we're going to make $1 million or whatever. But um, but I actually intend to. We're building an expansion right now. We're actually developing an expansion right now. The game
Awesome.
perfectly sets itself up for an expansion, and I'm really excited about that. A lot of different things I had to cut. For example, we designed like 16 angels, and depending on the number of stretch goals that we knock down, we're including 9 in the base game,
Okay.
or
Wow.
in the deluxe edition, in the full gameplay content edition. So yeah, there are a lot of things a lot of ways. One of the important things to me was that I would create a system that could be expanded upon. So Deliverance development took 5 years. I mean, it took a
Yeah.
long time, and part of
Yeah.
the challenge was just getting that system right so that adding new elements to it wouldn't break it, but would add more variety. And that's kind of the
Who's your favorite angel in the game?
absolutely, it's Azrael, the Angel of Death. He is really fun. I've always loved that. Each angel, you kind of have different build paths. So you can build Azrael, into like this huge, like plague turret, where he wants to sit in the back and just shoot plague and pestilence
Oh,
at
nice.
enemies. It's really fun.
Now,
Or
now wait a minute. Isn't Azrael the one that was built after you?
yes, actually, he has my face. Believe it or not, I used to have long, beautiful hair, and Azrael has got
But
those
isn't
long
there? But
locks.
isn't there? If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there also an angel with your wife's face?
It is, yes,
And why is
Christine.
that not your
And her
Favorite
favorite?
name,
angel.
it's my second favorite angel. So
Plus,
I
she's
guess
not she's
my
not immediately
cuteness.
behind him right now, so we can.
Yeah. I do play a lot of Christine. It's so fun because you can build the angel in kind of according to your style. So you can play Azrael as that as a healer. You can play him as like a melee rogue that just hits everybody with his Reaper's Scythe from melee and plagues and everybody from deals damage, extra damage with
Yeah.
afflictions, maintenance status effects. Just there's so many ways to play all of these characters. At least 3 solid build paths. And Christina, I've got one that I really love with her. So anyway,
That's awesome.
I digress. I could go.
Yeah, no, we could probably talk forever on it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at the stage where we're going to ask you a whole bunch of board gaming related questions to find out a little bit more about you as a gamer.
Awesome. You
You
got
ready?
it.
The lightning round.
Boom.
All right.
Ready.
First thing that comes to mind, and this is all related to board gaming. So, science fiction or fantasy?
Absolutely fantasy.
Fantasy. All right.
Although science fiction, so tough.
So you
Fantasy.
got to pick one.
I,
Got to stick with
pick
fantasy.
Yep.
Favorite game mechanic?
Deck building.
Deck building.
Oh.
Mine too. Last game that you played, other than your own.
Stormlight, a Call to Adventure, Stormlight Archive.
Okay.
All right.
Just finished it.
Game you most want to add to your collection.
Oh my goodness. Frosthaven.
Oh, nice. Okay.
The first game you ever played.
That was Pandemic.
Pandemic?
Really?
Okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Dice or cards?
Cards.
Deck builder or deck constructor?
Depends on how much money you have. Um, you know, I like deck construction. I played Magic and Pokemon and
All right.
Yu-Gi-Oh.
All right. And then legacy games. Destroy the components or preserve them?
I tore that first card in half in Pandemic.
Nice.
I will destroy them.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was it.
Awesome.
Nice and easy.
Andrew, it has
did it.
been such a pleasure having you on the show. Before we let you go, is there any
Anything else you want people to know about Deliverance, or like just give us a brief overview, or is there anything we haven't covered, or just tell people why should they back this game?
Definitely. I guess as far as why you might want to back the game, it is not so preachy. It is a Christian game, but it's not so preachy. So, half my fans are pastors and priests, and the other half are non-Christian, atheists, agnostics, Satanists, everything in between. And the reason they love it is because it's just a good game. It's game first, and so it'll be on Kickstarter just shortly after this podcast airs. And I want you to go test it, go look at what reviews have come out. I think that it's really important that the art is just second to I think second to none. But
The art
I
is
think the
gorgeous.
game-
I've seen it.
It is
Yeah.
beautiful game.
It definitely shows itself. So check it out on Kickstarter. It's $89 for the deluxe edition. You get sick angel minis
See,
that are
the price is
yeah.
right. The price is right. We will have our preview of the game coming out very soon, so check that as well. But June 8th, tomorrow or now, depends on when you're watching this, it's on Kickstarter, so go check it out. Link is right down there in the description.
Andrew, thank you so much for talking with us. I know we could talk forever about Deliverance, but people aren't going to stick around forever. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And good luck
All
with your
right.
campaign.
Appreciate it, Sean. Thanks. Hey everybody, Andrew from Deliverance here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. If y'all want to subscribe to OMG Nexus, you should do that. That button is below. And make sure to click that bell. Check out Kickstarter for Deliverance. Deliverance is on Kickstarter right now, and see you there.